large volcanic eruption shook Antarctica 3,980 years ago. As we've been told, Antarctica has over 100 volcanoes on the continent. This is Deception Island. Believe it or not, they're swimming in springs and fumaroles, hot springs of Deception Island in Antarctica. This is how hot it is right there. The water is beautifully warm enough for them to be bathing. It looks totally different from what we'd expect to see in Antarctica. Now, the Spanish National Research Council found something quite different than what they thought. A large volcanic eruption shook Deception Island in Antarctica 3,980 years ago, and not 8,300 years ago, as it was previously thought. This event was the largest eruption in the continent during the Holocene, and it was comparable in volume of ejection rock to the Tambora volcanic eruption of 1815. The large volcanic eruption shook Deception Island, Antarctica, 3,980 years ago. Institute of Earth Science Jaume Almera participated. The event was the largest eruption, he said, in the Austral continent during the Holocene. That's the last 11,700 years after the last great glaciation on Earth, and was comparable to the Tambora volcanic eruption of 1815. This eruption of Deception Island formed a caldera of the volcano, one of the most active in Antarctica, with more than 20 eruptions registered in the last 200 years. 20 eruptions in the last 200 years. That's what, every 10 years? In a study, whose first author was Dermot Antoniadis from the University of Laval in Canada, have taken part researchers from the University of Barcelona, Salamanca, and Cambridge and Leicester of the UK, the Centre for Research and Monitoring in the Sierra de Guadarrama National Park. Now, according to the Age published in this new study, a volcanic eruption caldera collapse type rock took place 3,980 years ago. The emptying of the magmatic chamber, the zone of magma accumulation that fueled the eruption during this violent eruptive event, caused a sudden pressure drop, which in turn caused the collapse of the upper part of the volcano. As a result, a depression between 8 and 10 kilometers in diameter was formed, which is what today gives to Deception Island its particular horseshoe shape. The caldera collapse would have caused a seismic event of great magnitude, whose trace was recorded in the sediments accumulated in the lake's bottom of Livingston Island. The calcitrine sediment cores were recovered during the Antarctic campaign of the Holo Antar project between 2012 and 14. This fieldwork was led and coordinated by Mark Oliva, then researcher at Instituto de Geográfica e Ordenamento of the University of Lisbon and also the University of Barcelona. They said the initial objective of the study was purely climactic, since we wanted to reconstruct the climate fluctuations of this region for the last 11,700 years, using different proxies found in the sediments of the Byers Peninsula lakes, about 40 kilometers north of Deception Island. But the presence of a different sediment layer in all the lakes and of the same age after a thick layer of tephra surprised us. Later, geochemical and biological analysis indicated that these sediments had terrestrial origin and were deposited abruptly in the lake's bottom. These results suggested the occurrence of a major earthquake that affected all this area, and it put us on track that perhaps we were not facing a common earthquake, but the one generated by the collapse of the caldera of the Deception Island volcano. From here on, we pulled the thread, explained Santiago Giralt, researcher for a co-author of the study. The exact date of the eruption was obtained using different geochemical, petrological and paleolimnological techniques, limno meaning lake, paleo lake techniques, applied on the sediment cores from 4 lakes of the Byers Peninsula from Livingston Island. These sedimentary records contain several direct and indirect pieces of evidence of the volcanic event that occurred in Deception Island. Quote, the recovered sedimentary records showed a common pattern. First, the volcanic ash from Deception Island erupted. The eruption, overlaid by a sediment layer almost 1 meter thick, composed by material dragged from the lake's shore to their bottom due to the large earthquake. And finally, a common lake sediment, which are the sediments which are characterized by an alternation of clays and mosses. One of the challenges that faced the study was to characterize the origin of the ashes produced during the volcanic eruption. For that, pressure and temperature conditions of the magmas that originated this eruption were calculated using the ashes present in the sediment cores. Using this methodology, we were able to estimate the depth of all studied samples to determine if they were part of the same magma and eruptive episode. The study also estimates that the eruption had a volcanic explosivity index of VEI 6, which possibly makes it the largest known Holocene eruptive episode in the Antarctic continent. Quote, this colossal episode of eruptive caldera collapse ejected between 30 and 60 cubic kilometers of ash, comparable in volume to the eruption of the Tambora volcano in 1815, an event that is attributed to a global temperature cooling that resulted in a series of bad harvests in Europe in what is known as the year without the summer, explained Adelina Geyer, researcher and co-author of the study. Quote, it is very important to be able to date this type of eruptions, as allowed us to understand the climate changes caused by volcanic eruptions, in this particular case at high austral altitudes. As suggested by this study, this eruption could have had significant climatic and ecological impacts in a large area of the southern region, although more studies and new data are needed to precisely characterize what the real effects on the climate of this large eruption event were. So this, obviously, such a VEI 6 ash eruption taking place less than 4,000 years ago, meaning 2000 BC. Let's put it that way, 2000 BC. 2000 BC, that's just before, the Exodus was at 1400 BC. So that's just before the Exodus from Egypt, where they believed that it was the Thera volcano that erupted, the Santorini volcano that erupted. Who knows? This is just 2000 BC, basically. Amazing. I never knew that. That it erupts every 200. It had more than 220 eruptions in the past 200 years. That's quite frequent. That's shockingly frequent. Anyway, this is by Dermot Andoniadis, Santiago Giralt, Adelina Geyer, from Spanish National Research Council, and it's on Science Daily. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because We help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.